You need to understand pieces of the puzzle. People want to be a multi-million dollar business. I want six-figure business. Distraction cost is a real thing. Opportunity cost is a real thing. So we don't have to sell 45,000 different things to be profitable. Can we sell 4 things?
Hey, this is John Horn from Stub Group, and I am super excited to be joined today by Ciara Stockeland from Inventory Genius. Ciara, thanks so much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you and I got to speak a little while ago on your podcast, which is really fun, talking about Google advertising, different ways that e-commerce businesses can leverage digital advertising to generate more sales. And today I'm really excited to tap into your expertise more on the inventory management, cash flow side of things, basically everything e-commerce businesses need to know to make sure that their numbers are on the right side of the P&L
Yes.
balance sheet and all the fun stuff that goes into that. So excited to dig into things with you here today.
Yeah, I am so excited. I'm always grateful for an opportunity to talk about money. So money, numbers, all the things that we want to know about, but sometimes we're afraid to ask about.
100%. We work with a lot of e-commerce clients here at Stub Group managing their advertising, and there's many times I've seen that conversation come up where it's like, well, hey, our return on ad spend is good, we're hitting our goals, but I don't have any money in the bank. Like
Yes.
what's happening? I don't, you're telling me, Stub Group, you're telling me I'm making profit, but I look at my bank account and there's no money in there. Where has it gone? So
Yes.
I guess as a place to start, could you kind of tell me what led you to get into the type of work you're doing right now? Kind of what's your journey there?
Yeah, so I have many decades in small business ownership now. I started my first retail store in 2006, built that, grew it, and franchised it. So we had multiple locations. We were the distributor for all the product. And so we had a warehouse, I had a team of 12, the corner office, all the things that we work for, seven-figure business, all the things. But I felt completely trapped in my business. So from the outside looking in, like many of you guys listening, it looked like I was, on a roll, right? But behind the scenes, I felt trapped. I didn't know what was happening. Where's all the money? I'm making millions of dollars. Where is it? Because I don't have $1 million. And I didn't understand that inventory was directly tied to cash flow and profitability. So we ended up, long story for another day, but we ended up losing everything. So I lost the business, including my home. We lost all of it. And I came to this point where I had an opportunity to decide, do I want to sit on the couch and cry, crawl in a hole, or do I want to build again, but do it differently this time? And so I chose the latter. I'm going to build again, only this time I'm going to focus on profit. I'm going to understand my numbers. I will take a paycheck from day one. And so I launched and grew a new business, which I built and sold within 18 months. It was profitable, paid myself a paycheck every single month that I had it. And through that business, started meeting other inventory-based business owners just like me with similar stories to what you mentioned at the beginning. I have all these sales. Where's all the money? I have so much debt. What am I going to do? How did I get here? I feel like an imposter. And I knew that I had the answers to these questions. And so I started consulting and working with product-based business owners to help them with financial strategy, give them the confidence that they could know their numbers, and just teach them how inventory and margin was directly related and tied to cash flow. And so that's what I'm doing today. I absolutely love it. I've worked with thousands of owners and helped them with many of these financial strategy pieces.
Kudos to you for having the energy and the guts to build back again. I know how crushing it is when something that you pour your blood, your sweat, and your tears into dies, and
Yeah.
it's so tempting to, like you said, cry on the couch and just say, hey, I don't want to try and go through that trauma again. So yeah, kudos for doing that again, and then also for looking to help other business owners not go through that same type of experience.
Yeah, I think that's something that I really bring to my coaching and consulting is the empathy, because I know what it feels like to get up at 2 a.m, hope that your cash hit the bank account because payroll's coming out at 7 a.m. I know what it feels like. My husband at one point was working a full-time job. He would cash his paycheck so that we could pay our employees. Like, I know what that feels like, but I also know what it feels like to be on the other side of that and to do things right and to have freedom in my schedule and freedom in my bank account. And I just love helping owners go from that financial stress to financial freedom because I know it's possible. And I remember wanting someone like myself at that point, to come along and help me. And so I'm just really thankful and grateful I get to do this in this part of my life. I love it.
That is awesome. So when a business comes to you, let's say they're a new client of yours, you're doing some coaching, some consulting with them, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see them making that you kind of want to, hey, here's low-hanging fruit, let's start fixing these things?
Yeah, I think first of all, they don't understand margin. So if I ask, when I do a consult call, I was just on one right before we chatted, and I asked the same series of questions. It's always interesting to hear the answers. When I ask, what's your margin? 99% of the time, people will say, well, I mark up my product 2 times to 4 times to 3 times, and markup is not margin. So understanding what actually is margin. And I like to just lay it out really simply. It's just a math problem, right? So it's this minus that equals this. So if we sell our product for $10 and we paid $5 for it, that's our cost of goods. The difference is $5. That $5 then has to cover operating our business in order to leave us with something. So that margin, that $5 margin really matters. If we buy something for $5 and we mark it for 10, but we end up marking it down to $6 or $6.50, our markup of that $10 is not the margin that we end up with. So really helping them understand what is your true margin. And that's where that's the lever I like to pull with them first. It's the lowest hanging fruit. I think the second thing that I see very often is that they don't understand how to read a financial. So a lot of times they'll get books, like they have an accountant, a bookkeeper, they get their financials, they put them in a file and move on. And so I just talk to them about what is a profit and loss? How do you read it? What is a balance sheet? What's the point of it? And it doesn't mean that they have to become bookkeepers, have to love their numbers, look at them 24/7, but you need to understand what the numbers, the pieces of the puzzle that the numbers are in your business. And so just helping them lay those pieces out and then start to create a plan of attack.
Very much along those lines, I'd love to get your thoughts on a real situation we had recently with a client where they came to us. So we've been working with them for a while. They had a specific return on ad spend goal, and they'd come up with that goal. Sounds like, based upon our additional conversation, sounds like based upon what they thought their margins were and their cost of goods sold. Like you're saying, hey, we know it costs this much to produce this product, and this is what we're selling it for. But they came to us recently and said, hey, we just looked at our profit and loss statement for last quarter, and we didn't make any money, even though you're hitting the target return on ad spend, because we have all these overhead expenses and we're not making, high enough number of profit with the ROAS we've given you to actually make money as a company. Yeah. So in a situation like that, kind of what's your framework for digging in with them and trying to help them change those numbers, change what those targets are, change how they think about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think looking at the numbers as puzzle pieces. So if you think of having a puzzle, if you were to buy a puzzle, you dump it out on the table, everything's upside down, inside out, right side up in a big pile. The first thing we want to do is we want to prop up the cover of that puzzle box so we can see the picture, what do we want this to look like at the end of the day? And then we start to look at all the pieces. We find those outlines, right? Those square edges, those corner pieces. We've all done this since we were little kids. You create the framework first. And so we start to flip over the puzzle pieces. We find those, we create the framework, and then we build the inside. So the same thing with our numbers, right? So with this client, I would say, okay, what's the overall picture? Where do we want to be? And it's not just top line revenue. People want to be a multi-million-dollar business. I want 6-figure business. What does that mean for you at the end of the day, though? So what do we want our picture to look like? And then what are the framework? What are the pieces, right? So that product that you were helping them advertise might not, or probably isn't the only product they sell. So what's happening underneath everything? What does the margin look like on everything else? What does the margin look like on that product? We build out, I have a very specific framework that I've created. We build out a 12-month profit plan, and your marketing and the ROAS we expect from that is only part of that puzzle. They have a lot of other things going on. So if we only focus on, well, I'm going to put $10,000 in a month and I'm going to make 30, but we don't know everything else that's going on in the business, that 30 could just be going to pay for salaries, and at the end of the day, it does us really no good. It's just busy work. So my framework is to look at the entire puzzle, to create the picture, and then to back into it and say, okay, now knowing where we want to go, what should we be advertising? What would we go to John and his group with and say, this is what we want to use our ad spend for. Here's the the ROI that we have to have out of it. Maybe it's 8 instead of 5. Maybe it's 13 instead of 10. If you guys don't know that, you don't know what target you should make, and so we create that, and then that's just part of it. And at the same time, we're working on the other pieces behind the scenes. So.
And obviously in the e-commerce space, inventory plays such a big role in that because of having to go out and acquire inventory often, before it's sold. And so you've got that on your books. So how do you work with clients on kind of that inventory management and planning side of things?
Yeah, so it really depends on their business model. A client I was just talking to, they actually refurbish furniture. So their inventory is very different than someone who would import everything, or someone who would resell, and because they have a brick and mortar and an e-com store for clothing. So it depends on the inventory itself. Like, what are we looking at? What are the costs actually associated with that inventory? Are you a maker? So are you someone that has raw materials and we need to account for that plus labor? Or are you buying finished goods and reselling finished goods? So I think it really depends on the type of inventory. And then from that, we can create a plan as to, how do we manage that inventory? How quickly should that inventory be turning? What's our investment in inventory need to look like? If you have someone that has an e-com store and they also have a brick and mortar, I like to look at those as two separate different businesses. So a lot of times an owner will say, well, let's say they sell jeans. I sell women's jeans. I sell some online, I sell some in brick and mortar. It's the same business. It's not the same business. So an e-com business and a brick and mortar, very different customer, very different marketing, all of those pieces. The margin needs to look different, right? So if you have a lot of overhead because you have a brick and mortar in California, that looks very different than if you're running a denim store out of a warehouse that's attached to your home and you have very little overhead. So it's understanding the inventory, what actually goes into the cost, and then creating a plan from that.
For, let's say, the typical business you work with, would you say you usually find them over purchasing or under purchasing, or maybe getting it just right in terms of inventory?
They never get it just right. Never get it. And I'll tell you, I just want to tell everyone listening, you will never get it just right, but we can fine tune it and get it a lot better. I would say the tendency is to over purchase. So there's always a cycle, right? We way over purchase, we can't sell it, we discount it out, now we don't have money, so we under purchase. So that is the flow that I see with almost everyone. Sometimes I come into the part of the journey where we've over purchased, we're attached to that inventory, we don't know what to do. And so our goal is to liquidate it out, but we do it with intention. And then once in a while, I'll come into the part of the journey where they've done that on their own. Now we have no cash and we have no inventory, so our sales are suffering. So it's about understanding like what amount of inventory should you have, and we base that on, there's some formulas that I use to base that on a couple different things, but how much should you have? How do we simplify the product, which is something we haven't talked about yet, but so important. I work with everyone on simplifying, because when we don't have sales, we overcomplicate. Our tendency is to say, well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to add this, I'm going to do this, because if I just do more stuff and have more stuff, I'll make more, which is not true. So how do we simplify that down and become very good at selling really boring, right? Like, how do we become boring? Because boring is usually profitable. And then from that, we can create like, what is our minimum inventory we need on hand in order to create the sales, and make those sales goals.
I'd love to double click on that simplification side of things, because you're absolutely right. If things aren't working, the temptation is let's do more. I want to fix this. More into it. Usually it's not, let's do less, and that will change things. So yeah, when you say simplify, are we talking about things like reducing number of variants? Are we talking about redesigning products? Like what does simplifying mean to you?
Yeah, I think in every business, this is going to look a little different too, but as a general rule, it's simplifying revenue streams. So I think we've bought into this idea that, we hear this all the time, multiple revenue streams, don't have all your eggs in one basket. And I always think like, who decided that? Like, who came up with that? Because let's look at the numbers, right? So an example would be, I had a client, she wholesaled, she all online. So e-com only, no brick and mortar. Wholesale, retail, so B2B, B2C, and private label. But she sold the same product. So she was like, I have one business. I said, you have 3 businesses with 3 completely different customers, 3 different average tickets. three different ways to stock your inventory. And so for her, it's about getting her to simplify down what is the one revenue stream that's going to be the most profitable and turn the inventory the quickest. Let's focus on that. And that is very, very hard for an entrepreneur to do, because they say, well, but I'm not putting a lot of time over here. Like, it's just kind of running itself. And I talk about distraction cost, not just fixed cost, but like distraction cost is a real thing, right? Opportunity cost is a real thing. So how do we actually measure the return on investment, not just on our ad spend, but on everything, on the warehouse shelf space, on the employees that we have to have, because now we're doing retail, wholesale, and private label. So sometimes, or a lot of times, it's simplifying the revenue streams, and then simplifying the product mix. So we don't have to sell 45,000 different things to be profitable. Can we sell 4 things? I give this illustration of the vodka lemonade stand. So I bought my husband tickets for a Notre Dame concert. It was Billy Joel at Notre Dame. Super excited. Best. I'm not a good gift giver. Best gift I ever gave. So I'm going to cling to that forever. But so we go to this concert, we walk in, and I was like, okay, we're going to get a drink, a fun snack. And then I realized they sell beer everywhere because it's Notre Dame Stadium. Well, I just don't care for beer. And I was like, shucks. What am I gonna do? I guess I'll have water. And then I saw a vodka lemonade stand, and I was like, perfect, that's what I'll have. I'll get a vodka lemonade. So I walk over there, and I was like, this is a teaching moment for my clients. They only sold one thing, one size, one price. And they had no lack of customers in that line, because they didn't care that they weren't selling spritzers and wine coolers and beer and soda. They said, there is a market for this one item, and we're going to make it as simple as possible. I guarantee you their margins were through the roof, right? One person squeezing the lemon, one is adding ice, one's ringing up, and it's very efficient. One product that they had to buy and sell. And so I tell my clients, like, what is your vodka lemonade? Instead of trying to appeal, and I'm sure this would help you as a marketer, right? Instead of trying to appeal to all these avatars, who is that one person? How can we cut through the noise and say, like, Ciara doesn't like beer, but over here we've got vodka lemonade. She would like that. She'll pay whatever. She doesn't care about the size. So it's just super simple. And so that's what we need to do when we come look at simplification. Like, what's our vodka lemonade? What's the one thing that we can do really well?
That example really resonates with me, because you're exactly right. We often, on the marketing side of things, have to have a similar conversation, which is, hey, you've got 10,000 SKUs. You've got, hey, you're like, I can sell to anybody, anywhere, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like, no, well, that's not a good place to start. Maybe we'll get there someday, but really, what is working? What is selling for you right now? Who is actually purchasing from you right now? What are their demographics and psychographics? And let's focus on your core audience. Let's focus on actually, just putting fuel in the fire of what's already working for you with targeted advertising. And then we can scale that, we can expand that over time. But we don't want to just throw spaghetti at the wall, advertise all 10,000 SKUs, and then nothing happens with the ad spend, because you spent $1 each for every SKU, and no idea what's going to happen. So I love that. I love that analogy. Yeah. I think another thing that I see a lot as well with e-commerce businesses these days, speaking of simplification and multiple streams, is there's a lot of platforms they can be on. You've got obviously your own website, you've got Amazon, you've got Walmart, so forth and so on. How do you think through working with clients who are across multiple platforms, and is there different P&L considerations, different inventory planning considerations that have to go into each of those different platforms?
Yeah, I think that comes back to the more simple your product, the more simple your concept, the easier those decisions are as well. So let's go back to that client with the retail, wholesale, and private label. This is the exact conversation we had. She's like, okay, I have $1,500 in, ad money a month. What should I do with it? I said, well, if we only had one concept, we would have a lot clearer vision on what to do with it. But because you're dealing with B2C, maybe you should be on TikTok and Facebook. Because you're dealing with private label, you don't need to advertise anywhere, because that's a direct customer. You can just make a cold call. And because you want to sell B2B, maybe Instagram is right for you, and so everything becomes confusing. And so I said, if we could dial into one revenue stream, let's say we go with the private label, Now we know the only place that you need to actually be is, let's say, Instagram, as far as just showing the product, but we're not going to even advertise or market there. Let's put your marketing money into booths where you go on site to vendor shows, where these private label company will come to look for product. So I think we get confused by all of that because we don't know what we're selling and who we're selling it to. What's the problem that your customer has, not the product that you're trying to sell them? What's your solution? And where do they hang out? Like, what keeps them up at night, and where do they live? Where do they spend time? I have another business, Two Gens Tri, because I'm a triathlete, endurance triathlete. So is my daughter. And so we do Ironman competitions. So we have an Instagram, Two Gens Tri. We're only on Instagram because that's where other endurance athletes go to get inspiration, go to get tips, it makes it so easy for me because it's the only place I have to post. It's the only place I need to spend ad money. It's, it makes it so simple because I know exactly who my potential client is, instead of thinking I need to be over here and I need to be over here in all these places. So I think that comes when the rest of the business becomes more simple as well.
Absolutely. Got a sidetrack there on the running side of things. I know I'm late to the game, but recently read the book Born to Run. Have you read Born to Run?
I haven't, but I know of it. It's on my list.
It was so fascinating. It's I forget the name of the tribe out of Mexico that it's kind of based around, but the long distance runners who have this culture of long distance running, and then who got into some of the long distance running events here in the US and kind of tracking, also going into the barefoot running movement as well.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm impressed. I've done one marathon in my life, and it was quite the experience. So just imagining doing an Ironman, doing a triathlon,
a marathon at the
way
end
beyond
of
me.
the
So.
Yeah, it's a whole new level, but it's great.
Kudos.
It gives me something to do, but because my business is so niche down and focused, I have the freedom to do that. And I think, in speaking to all of you entrepreneurs that are listening, we don't want to give things up. It's so hard when I start working with a client. I always want them to give things up because I know what that can do for them. And it's hard to be on the other side of it. But I'm giving up potential sales. I'm giving up potential, my reputation, whatever we tell ourselves the stories. Yeah. But when we can simplify down, not only do we clean up our financials and create more financial strength, we can create more time. And so I can spend 20 hours a week training for Ironman because my business is so simple. Now I work with inventory-based businesses on strategy. That's it, and so it makes it really easy for me to do all of those pieces well.
That's awesome. So a couple final questions, wrap things up. For those who are listening, so if you're speaking to which you are here, if you're speaking to an e-commerce business, and you'd say, here are some of the core questions that you should be asking yourself about your business. Could be metrics that you should know. It should be whatever it is. What would you say some of the questions are that business owners should be asking of themselves and of their business?
Yeah, I think, going back to what I said earlier, what is my true margin and how is that affecting profitability? I think, what does success look like to me? Stop defining success by what everyone tells you it should look like. In my book, Inventory Genius, I talk about, I had the multi-million-dollar business, but didn't have a paycheck. And then I also built a business that was much less than that. And I had a paycheck that I loved, and I had the freedom, right? So it's not about top line revenue. So ask yourself, what does success truly look like to me? If you want a multi-million-dollar business, great. If that's your definition of success. And then I think just ask yourself why you've been putting off doing what you know needs to get done. Every single one of you guys listening knows you need strong financials. You know you need a good foundation. So why are you not working on it? And I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll find the answer, and then you can create a plan, right? I'm scared. I don't know who to ask. I've tried before and it didn't work. Right? So just be honest and then find a solution to that problem. If you're scared, then let's overcome that. If you don't know who to ask me, find someone that can help you, find someone that you can bring onto your team. And then ask yourself this final question: am I interested or committed to the result? Because everybody that comes to me is so interested, right? They're interested in getting rid of debt. They're interested in getting out of financial pain. They're interested in cash flow. But the ones that are committed are the ones that say, I will do whatever it takes, even though it's painful and uncomfortable, because I want to be on the other side of this. And I can tell you, I just helped a client in less than a year. We've paid off over $500,000 in debt.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And someone asked me on my, so I have a group that I work with. I work one-on-one, but then the group gets together once a month to talk about numbers.
Mhm.
And one of the other gals that's fairly new on the call said, okay, you told us all this debt that you paid off. Tell us what you did. Like, how did you do it? Right? Because everyone wants that. And so this client, shared some things. And I said, I'm going to add to that. It's because she was absolutely committed. When I said, this is what we have to do, even though it seemed really odd or extremely uncomfortable, she did the work. And so I think ask yourself, are you interested in financial security, or are you committed, or are you just interested? And if you're just interested, why? Why aren't you committed?
Ciara, I can't think of a better place to end than there. Fantastic conversation. I learned a lot. I know those watching will as well. What is the best place and way for businesses in the inventory and commerce space who want help to reach out to you?
Yes, you can just go to my website, ciarastockeland.com. I have a quiz we all love a quiz, right? So jump over to the website, click on work with me, and it'll take you to a quiz where we can walk through like some of your pain points right now, where you want to be, what is the size of your business, and then I can help you from there to kind of direct you into what would be the best tools and resources and ways to work with me. So I think that would be the best option, and all my socials and everything else are there as well.
So ciarastockeland.com. We'll have that in the description and show notes. Please go check her out and check out her work. And hopefully those watching, you found this conversation helpful. So Ciara, thanks so much for joining. It's great getting to speak with you.